Peekaboo. It's me, Shirgi. I've been so busy these past few days, doing a lot of sleeping, eating pasta, reading Wikipedia articles, having such productive conversations. Very productive. Now I'm here. And today in particular, just to illustrate how absolutely wondrously busy I am, I spent like 5 hours in the library today. For the first few minutes, I just started perusing, just looking for something that would catch my eye. I picked up two books, one about the journals and the writings of Albert Camus. He's a philosopher, French philosopher that invented absurdism, which is like a distant cousin of existentialism. And another book caught my eye called The Soul of Pierre by Georges Ornet, or Ornay, I don't know how to say his name. And the only reason that it caught my eye, I've never heard of this author and I've never heard of the story. It's just that the book had a very interesting spine. It was like a white book, ivory colored, with a very decorative spine. And then I pulled the book out and it had a very ornate cover. And by ornate, I don't mean like covered in pictures or anything. It had like patterns. Something about the book made it look ancient. Not ancient. That's the wrong word. Something about the book made it seem... It looked like something that you would find in a treasure chest. So that immediately caught my attention. I opened the book and it had a copyright of 1890, which I don't know if that's when the book was printed, but I'm just going to pretend that's when the book was printed because it just looked that old. 1890. So I started reading it, The Soul of Pierre, and it doesn't even have like an introduction or anything. It just, table of contents, nothing. It just goes straight into it. It like starts out as like a comedy. I'm talking about a bunch of rich aristocratic people, a bunch of gentlemen, if you will. I'm talking about science and philosophy for like one page, and then all of a sudden it's like science is stupid and we're all falling asleep, and all the women are about to fall asleep because science is so boring. And then they go do their own things. And then the main character, Pierre, who's a painter, I read like half the book in one sitting. Didn't finish it, and I might have, but I didn't for reasons that I'll talk about. But Pierre goes, he talks to his doctor, and he says like, I've been so sick recently. No, wait, no, that's his friend. His friend Jacques is very sick. For reasons he got infected with like something in the lungs. And they're just I'm making small talk, I guess, and Pierre's like, man, I'm having a love affair right now and it's just not working out, guys. This is so sad. I'm very sad. And one of the guys is like, you're so sad about your love affair. It's so easy to just leave a girl. You coward. Just do it. You're so cowardly. I'm gonna go gamble. Screw all of you guys. And that's like the attitude of the book for like the beginning. And it's like very self-aware, which is nice because it's talking about a bunch of aristocrats, and otherwise I probably would have gotten real bored if it wasn't at least a little witty. So what ends up happening is that Pierre goes and confronts his quote-unquote lover. He's like so tortured by her, and like he feels like he's attached to her spiritually or something, because he's like, man, I'm such a like emotional slave to this girl and I just can't quit her. Why can't I quit you? And so he goes to her, and then she gets angry at him, and she's like, I'm already dating one of your friends, so why do you even care? Just go, leave. And then Pierre is really sad, and he goes out onto the cliff, and he's like, man, everything sucks. This sucks. And so he pulls out a card, he writes out his last will and testament to his friend. He's like, bro, I'm too sad right now, so I'm just gonna go die. You can take my soul and be happy. So he jumps off of the cliff into the rocks, into the sea. Actually, he doesn't do that. That's what I thought he did. But apparently he just waddles into the ocean, I guess expecting to drown. And the doctor from before, he goes and picks up that note. He finds that note, and then like the next few days, he like brings it to Jacques, his friend, and apparently Jacques' sister was Pierre's childhood friend, and they all see that he committed suicide, and he's like, and they're all very sad, especially the sister named Juliette. She's very sad. She's like, boo hoo, I can't believe he's dead. This is so sad. I wanted to marry him or whatever. But Pierre, while he was wading out into the ocean, he left all his fancy clothes behind, and he saw like a smuggler ship, and he saw someone fall off the back of the smuggler ship. And his country does not like smugglers. Earlier they met some policemen that did not like smugglers, and they want to shoot him dead. But he sees one of the smugglers fall off the back of the ship, and he's like, bro, I got nothing to live for, I might as well go save this guy. And so he goes and tries to save the guy, and he nearly drowns in the process, and he's like, you know what, I was about to die a really sad and pathetic death, but at least now I'll die like a heroic-ish death. Even though I'll be saving a smuggler, at least I'm giving my life for someone else's right now instead of dying because I'm sad. But both of them are saved by the smuggler ship, and Pierre, the first thing he does is smoke a cigar instead of, I don't know, asking for clothes. He does do that later, but he asks for a cigar, and he smokes that, and then he lives with the smugglers for a while. And I guess I didn't say this because I didn't realize until now, but Pierre and the gang, they're all French, and they live in France. And the smugglers are Italian. And so he lives in Italy for a while, and I was like, wow, life is so great. I hated being a gentleman, and now that I'm living a more simple life in your primitive country, which was nearly a direct quote from him, it was like, your country is so more ass backwards than ours in France, but I'm having such a great time here that I don't feel like leaving. So he lives there for a while, and apparently the doctor realizes that he's still alive because he visits the church in Italy, and he says, I recognize the paintings on these walls. They must have been painted by Pierre. And he doesn't reveal Pierre's identity because he realizes that he wants to be kept secret. Right? Because everyone in France thinks Pierre's dead. And they're all sad about it. And I guess Pierre and the doctor know that if he goes back, he'll just look like a pathetic weirdo that faked his own death, probably out of a stroke of ego. So he versus to just stay anonymous for a while. So the doctor lets him be, but he lets him know that he's alive by sending like a secret message in Latin or whatever. And Pierre, he just has a great time in Italy. He's buying clothes, painting pictures on ships, on like boat ships. And then the man whose life he saved, that man invites him over to his house, and he lives there for 2 months. Those guys really like him. I mean, the family owes Pierre because Pierre saved one of their children's lives. So they accept him for a while. He goes hunting, shooting, fishing, painting, just living it up. Eating grapes in Italy. What a great time. But then Pierre goes back out to the sea, and he does there's a lot of just Pierre going out to the sea and characters going out to the garden because they're aristocrats and they have a garden and they just start thinking about stuff, and they're so in their feelings. In the first half of the book, it was very self-aware, like I was talking about. So Pierre goes out to the sea, and he's just like, man, I'm having a great time here, but the people back home must be very sickly about my death, and I was good friends with them, and now maybe I should go home and just, face them again and tell them that everything and blah, 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 blah. And apparently there's like this weird, I don't know if it's supposed to be a metaphor or just something random that happens, but Pierre decides that he's going to basically decide his fate on the flip of a coin. Not actually, but he sees a dove and an eagle, and the eagle tries to swoop up the dove, and Pierre makes a bet with himself and he says that uh, if the dove manages to break free of the eagle, then he will return back to France. If the eagle successfully captures his prey, then he will stay in Italy. And what happens is the dove, struggles against the eagle, and the eagle captures it against the rocks, and it's about to eat the dove when suddenly an unidentified sniper shoots the eagle dead, and then the dove breaks free. And Pierre's like, wow, this random dude with a gun just changed the course of my life. That was pretty cool. And that's it. It's like, is that supposed to be a metaphor, or is that a joke, or is that both of them at the same time? But at that point, like, I was like kind of rooting for Pierre because he was like a gentleman, but he was in his feelings, and I was kind of like, okay. But then he was having a good time, and he was like on a path of self discovery. Um, so that's how it ends. That's how the fight between the eagle and the dove ended. It was only like 2 or 3 paragraphs that describe that thing, but sure. And might I also add that this book is written in the floweriest language possible. Like, I understand that it's a book printed in 1890, but man, I understood it, but it was so long. It described everything that happened. But I kept reading it because it was kind of funny up until this point. And then it cuts back to back in France, where Jacques apparently has recovered completely from his illness. But sister of Juliet, the sister of Jacques, is very gravely sick because she's mourning Pierre's death. Supposedly, they don't know that he's alive, but they think he's dead. And apparently, if like this is like almost to the end of where I stopped reading, so I remember it a bit more vividly. But Jacques is like at a masquerade party because he's back up and he has like a newfound appreciation for life because he was so close to death, but then he made a full recovery, and he's like, bro, medical science is dog water and it hasn't helped me at all, and science is stupid, and all the science in the world didn't heal me, but all of a sudden my friend died and now I'm alive, which is pretty cool. So it must be some sort of divine intervention or whatever. And I mean, I say that very dryly, but he's still very like sensitive about the death of his friend. And like some random girl in the mask confronts him about this and brings up Pierre's name, and he's like, don't you ever talk to me about this again, go away, and he goes away. And then the next, like, I don't know, the next whole chapter, and these chapters are very long, the next chapter is just all of the characters just being sad. Like, oh no, Pierre died, and I'm so like drama, and I can't believe that you, Jacques, are still alive, or my lover Pierre, he's dead, and this isn't. I don't like this, and I don't want to go to Russia, and I don't want to move. I just want to stay right here, and I just want to keep being in my feelings, and this goes on for so long. I was like, okay, yeah, I see all you guys back in France. When are we gonna get back to Pierre and his like fun adventures? I kept reading for it. It felt like an hour. It must have been like 20 minutes, but it felt like an hour of just me reading of these characters being just so mopey and melodramatic. And I was like, I can't bear to read any more of this, because at the beginning of the book it was like kind of poking fun at the melodrama, but here it was just completely like immersed in it, and I got really bored. So I stopped reading the book, but I was curious how it ended, so I flipped to the end, and I'm like, okay, what happens at the end? And I didn't even bother to read the last chapter leading up to it. I just skipped to the end, and it's like, apparently Pierre died or something. He died at some point, and then Jacques is also about to die from, I don't know. And he was like, oh, Jacques is talking to his lover, and is like, oh, carry on my soul, and be well like I was. Bleh. And then he dies, and that's how the book ends. And I'm like, is is this book supposed to be like a comedy? Is it supposed to be a tragedy? Is it both at the same time? But then like it was so fun in the beginning, and then it just got all sad at the end. That's not very satisfying. So I shelved that book, and apparently I had like drained all of my reading energy because I had been in the library for like 4 or 5 hours just straight up reading this long, fluffy, flowery book. And I picked up the book of Camus' writings and I started reading through some of it, but I'm like, I'm just so pooped out of this. I'll just pick up these books another day, I guess. So I shelved the Soul of Pierre, and I also got rid of the Camus book, even though I like him. Nothing against that guy. I was just so tired out. So that's how I spent the afternoon. So if any of you wanted to know what the VTuber lifestyle was like, I might be the only VTuber in existence that has ever done anything like that. Just pick up a random book from the 1800s and read it all afternoon, and now I'm relaying back what I learned to you. That's pretty cool, right? Anyway, I'm really thirsty after talking about all that, so I'm gonna drink my invisible VTuber water that you can't see. Delicious. I attempted to use Sibelius, the software. I almost crashed out like 7 times during trying to find out the UI I had installed yesterday. I'm not gonna lie, I have my own problems with MuseScore. I've heard Dorico is pretty awesome. I've been thinking about if I can make my own. I've talked about this on my Discord server like a few times, but I've talked about ways that I could potentially create my own like realistic instrument synthesizer. Like I know like Note Performer exists, but I have some ideas on how to make it better. And also Note Performer is like over $100 just for like a single, even it's a perpetual license, but like a single license. And I'm like, I bet if I could make my own, I could charge way less and make a better product, and I could sell it to people, this realistic instrument playback. And I think I could do it, but that would require me to learn how to make like VST plugins or whatever, which is a whole thing, but maybe. Excuse me. It's not just the ideal life, it's the nerdy life, which is the one that I live. You go into your local library, just picking out a book because you thought it looked interesting from a distance, and just started reading it. I think I'm going to try doing that more often. My library has a lot of literature. Literature as opposed to like nonfiction, like textbooks and stuff like that, is a lot of literature. Which I guess most libraries do, but my library has like a ton. Lots of plays, and I kind of want to start reading plays, because I never really got into plays. So I mean, of course plays are meant to be watched, but might as well read some while they're there. But if they're anything like the Soul of Pierre, I think I'll pass. Okay. And here's something that I want to start for my streamsies, because instead of me just making small talk with y'all, I want to try actually reading stuff. Something useful, or at least something entertaining. So I actually have a book in front of me. It's called The History of Orchestration by Adam Kars, Dover Publications Incorporated, New York. Apparently it's dated, which is probably when the library received it, February 4th, 1965. But it must have been printed before that. So, and it has on its own cover that its price is $2. So, whatever period that books were $2 in is when this was made. And I love reading the prefaces to these textbooks because they're so dry. I'm hoping this one is too. I haven't actually read it yet, so let's see for ourselves. No independent investigation has been made for the purposes of this volume of dates and matters concerning general musical history. Space, semicolons, double space. The statements of standard histories and dictionaries of music have been accepted for orchestration purely as such in italicized font. Only the evidence of actual full scores has been accepted. Every care has been taken that the scores consulted should show their orchestration as the composers left it. With this object in view, first edition's contemporary prints and MSS, whatever that means, have been consulted in preference to reprints. For historical purposes, the modern performing editions, arrangements, or adaptations of 17th and 18th century music are obviously useless. Historical reprints such as the Denkmaler der Tonkunst series, those of the Gesellschaft für Musikforschung, that's how you pronounce that. I'm the authority on German. And sundry reprints or quotations in the historical works of such as Goldschmidt, von Winterfeld, Eitner, Rochlitz, Schering, and other German historians have been found to be reliable and historically accurate. The experience of the author... I don't care. I'm moving on to the introduction. The story of the orchestra and of orchestration may be said to begin when modal vocal polyphony, having reached its culmination in the 16th century, okay, that's like, what, Renaissance, maybe? Educated musicians began to turn their attention to the composition of music, designed specifically for stringed wind and keyboard instruments in combination, and in particular to the embryonic forms of opera, oratoria, and ballet, which, accompanied by primitive and unorganized orchestras, okay, didn't have to word it that way, they're just doing their best, man, then began to take shape and to absorb much of the energy which musicians had hitherto expanded almost exclusively on the composition of ecclesiastical and secular vocal music. Okay, why did you say ecclesiastical and secular vocal music? That's basically saying, oh, yeah, we wrote for the church and then we also wrote for the not church. So, all music? What do you mean ecclesiastical and secular? That's just music. You could just say music. The Mass, Motet, and Madrigal. The birth of the orchestra is thus connascent, C-O-N-N-A-S-C-E-N-T, connascent, what a word, with the creation of secular instrumental music as a cultured form of the art, and largely arises out of the tradition from modal polyphony to monody. Okay. It coincides with the inception of purely instrumental music for bowed string instruments of dramatic music, and with the beginning of the gradual obsolescence of the viol type, rendered inevitable by the greater suitability and practical superiority of the newly invented violins. Also with the beginning of the gradual rejection of plucked string instruments as a medium for the expression of serious music. Oh, sad. Sorry, Archloon, you didn't quite make the cut. The evolution divides itself broadly into two periods, the first ending soon after the middle of the 18th century with the death of two great masters of harmonic polyphony, Bach and Handel. The second beginning with the rise of modern orchestration in the hands of Haydn and Mozart. If you guys know me on Discord, then you know I have some opinions about Haydn. But anyway, the transition is chronologically spanned by the work of Gluck and a group of secondary composers, of which perhaps the best remembered are Philipp Emanuel Bach and Hasse. I don't know that guy, but oh man. This dude. So first of all, in the very introduction, he's like, also the beginning of the gradual rejection of plucked string instruments as a medium for the expression of serious music. So immediately you throw shade towards the lute and associated instruments, and he calls Philip Emanuel Bach a secondary composer, whatever that means. Intimately and inseparably connected with the history of orchestration are progress in the art and the technique of musical composition, improvements in the construction of musical instruments, both of which are again associated with the growth of instrumental technique. Influences not without considerable effect on the subject and those arising out of the circumstances and could. I felt a burp coming throughout that whole sentence. Influences not without considerable effect on the subject are those arising out of the circumstances and conditions under which composers carried their work. Also, the positions occupied socially and geographically by the men who made musical history. One may instance, for example, the small public reached by Bach's music during his lifetime and for long after his death, the comparative isolation and limited influence of Purcell, the obscurity of Schubert's life, or more favorable conditions such as the position and opportunities of Lully at the concert of Louis XIV of France, the cosmopolitan activities of Handel, the advantages enjoyed by Haydn as an orchestral composer under princely patronage, or the quick diffusion of his orchestral music by the socially gifted and much-traveled Mendelssohn. I like the Mendelssohn shout-out. Shout-out to Mendelssohn. Hello. Other influences are those arising from the political and national histories of European countries and dynasties during the last 3 centuries, commercial conditions insofar as they concern the music printing and publishing trade, and the manufacture of musical instruments, also from the enterprise of operatic, dramatic, and concert-giving institutions. The tastes and tendencies of society and public in various countries at various times, the patronage of musical art by royalty, nobility, or wealth, and the different systems of musical education which have been in vogue. All those have reacted directly on general musical history, and not indirectly on the evolution of orchestration. Okay. Rapid and easy communication between countries, foreshadowing, and facilities for the quick diffusion of orchestral music by means of printed scores and parts are conditions which did not prevail during the 17th and 18th centuries. Thus, progress made even by prominent composers of one country did not necessarily spread to other musical centers with the same rapidity as what in tarnation am I reading? Thus, progress made even by prominent composers in one country did not necessarily spread to other musical centers with the same rapidity as the present, or during the 19th century. Indeed, considering the comparative isolation of some composers, and the fact that much of their music remained in manuscript during their lifetimes, the wonder is that the progress was so general as it proved to be. Little, if any, of Bach's, Mozart's, or Schubert's orchestral music was published while they lived. Both Bach and Schubert remained to be practically rediscovered by later generations, while others wrote in and for one country, in some cases forming musical backwaters which could not communicate any considerable impetus to the mainstream of general progress. The same applies to orchestral and in particular to wind instruments and the improvement to their mechanism which have transformed them from crude signals of the chase, the field, or the fair, to the highly organized artistic media of the modern concert room or theater. Thus, the clarinet, quote-unquote, invented circa 1690, does not appear as a regular constituent of the orchestra till quite 100 years later. Trombones, known and used long before orchestration, can be said to have begun do not permanently join the orchestral body till the 19th century, and valves applied to brass instruments from their inception early in the same century took quite 50 years to come into anything approaching general use. Yeah, because of this guy named Beethoven. The diffusion of orchestral music before the 19th century depended largely on the circulation of manuscript copies of scores and parts, or the personal travels of composers carrying them with their manuscripts. A visit to a particular musical center would also, do people even, I guess we don't live on carriages nowadays, but I imagine a lot of professional composers still prefer to write it on score paper, right? Do they just carry with them briefcases of their manuscripts from place to place when they're arranging music? Because I imagine, I don't think John Williams is using MuseScore to write his scores. I'm almost certain that he's still writing that stuff by hand, so I wonder if they still carry like binders of their own music. I don't know. I haven't met a professional composer. A visit to a particular musical center would result in the composition of some work written and orchestrated to suit the resources of a particular theater or concert orchestra. And thus, Mozart wrote Prague and Paris symphonies, masses for Salzburg, operas for Milan, Munich, Prague, and Vienna. Similarly, Haydn wrote a large number of works for the orchestra maintained by his employer, Prince Esterhazy, 6 symphonies for Paris and 12 for London. And they were all boring and terrible. Lengthy residence in one locality produced works designed for the orchestral combination, to which the composer had access. Lully and Bach wrote each for their own resources, respectively, at Paris and Leipzig. Handel for the opera at Hamburg, Hanover for Italy or England according to where he settled for the time being. Gluck wrote for Vienna or Paris, and so on. Parts are even occasionally added to or deleted from scores when a work was transferred from one center to another where the orchestra differed in constitution. Further, there is abundant evidence that composers often adapted their orchestration to suit even individual players, and would contrive an exceptional part for a conspicuously good player and allot insignificant matter to inferior players, or would write no part at all for instruments in which particular orchestras were not available or their players incompetent. Okay, so basically what he says that if the composer knew that, if he knew that their horn section was useless, then he just wouldn't write for horns. But if he knew that a violinist in Paris was really good, then he'd write a really cool violin part. But if he knew that their flute players were terrible, then he wouldn't write no flute parts. All these conditions unite in producing a more or less unstable selection of instruments in the scores of composers who wrote before the time when increased facilities for wider circulation of orchestral music caused them to orchestrate for the musical world generally, and to score their works for standard combinations of instruments which they could rely on finding at all centers where orchestral music was seriously cultivated. I just met a composer named James Seiler this week. Our school of music invited him because we were playing one of his pieces. That sounds so cool. Having the school invite you out because they were playing one of their works. I will say though, and I've been saying this for a while, I don't really have like proof of it, but it seems pretty obvious to me that the orchestra, like the standard orchestra as we know it, flutes, oboes, clarinets, bassoons, like one contrabassoon, horns, trumpets, trombones, maybe a tuba, bass trombone, and then string section, timpani, bass drum, cymbals. The orchestra, right? That was basically entirely standardized by Ludwig van Beethoven. Like he just kept expanding the orchestra, and by the time he reached his last symphony, Symphony Number 9, he had expanded the orchestra, well, with a choir, but he had expanded the orchestra as much as he could up until that point. And then because maybe, like this book was saying, it might have been due to just at the same time music started being widespread, or maybe Beethoven's immense popularity, just kind of like a combination of those, like where music started being readily available, or no, sheet music and its orchestration started being readily distributable at the same time when Beethoven was at the height of his popularity. I bet it doesn't list like a date, but this change takes place about the close of the 18th century. Yeah, so, when Beethoven's height of popularity and the Romantic era starts. And I think because of that, Beethoven's popularity, and also, like it says here, when music started being distributed more widely, is when the orchestra started settling into a more standardized form, as we know it today. But I blame Beethoven mostly, because everyone at that point was basically calling him like the pinnacle of all music that ever existed, and he is the most sophisticated out of all of us. And I guess he became kind of apocryphal by the time of his death. So he gained this kind of legendary status almost immediately in classical music, and he still does, because, man, the music elitists love Beethoven. The change takes place about the close of the 18th century, before which time composers vary their orchestration to suit particular orchestras, and after which orchestras, when varying at all, are adjusted to suit particular scores. Okay, so around this time, the close of the 18th century, composers used to write for the orchestra, but now the orchestra arranges itself for the composition. Easier communication between countries, increased production and circulation of printed scores and okay, you already talked about this. Blah, 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 blah. The innovation of one man now quickly becomes the common property of all. Okay, yeah, the printing press, I know. For convenience and clearness, a survey of progress in orchestration must be divided into periods. However, which should not be conceived of... Okay. Do you talk about anything that isn't just restating the same thing over and over? I know, you literally have said like 3 times, like, guys, when we started printing more sheet music became more widely available. Okay. The first period covers the transition from modal polyphony to monody. You already talked about that. And culminates the harmonic polyphony of Bach and Handel. You talked about that last page. Okay. Oh no, somebody wrote in this book. Okay. Orchestral instruments in the 17th century, chapter 1. Trying to meet the minimum word count. Man, these books that were written so long ago, what's this, 1965? They really feel like that. You can blame the author here. What's his name again? Adam Carse. Carse spelled C-A-R-S-E. The lute and its larger kin, the theorbo and archlute or chitarrone, share with the harpsichord, spinet, or organ the distinction of having served as the backbone of such rudimentary orchestras as were used to accompany the vocal parts of the earliest opera and oratorio, dating from the year 1600. Man, it's probably that like these words like primitive and rudimentary just didn't carry the same negative connotation that they do now, but man, that's so rude. It was at the time and for those instruments that the figured bass part, or basso continuo, was devised, and although no specific quote-unquote parts for the instruments appear in the scores, there is abundant evidence to show that those chordal and keyboard instruments playing either together or alternately supplied a continuous harmonic background for orchestral music even long after the string orchestra was sufficiently well organized to have undertaken that fundamental duty unassisted. During the greater part of the 17th century, recitative and vocal solos were provided with no more written accompaniment than the bare bass part, on which the chords were superimposed by instrumental players according to the figuring. The system died hard. Okay. And is well known, lingered even throughout the period of Haydn and Mozart for the accompaniment of recitative in sacred or secular dramatic music, although by that time the lutes had become obsolescent, leaving their functions entirely to the keyboard instruments. Yeah, so we talked about this, where the plucked instruments like the lute, they just kind of fell out of style. And maybe it's just because they're not like loud enough, like compared to a violin and compared to like, you know, the flutes and stuff, like the theorbo and the lute, they just weren't loud enough to project over them. I mean, they were supposed to be harmonic backgrounds, but I guess people just favored the sound of the violin, or maybe because the violin and the cello and the bass can project more than like a lute can, so that's why they were preferred. They filled the sound filled the room of the concert hall more. Maybe, I don't know. He doesn't discuss that. He just says it like it is. It is that core of merely chordal harmony that what? It is to that core of merely chordal harmony that a group of bowed string instruments and pairs of wind instruments attach themselves, ever growing in number and volume of tone, Beethoven, till eventually the core itself became superfluous. I was discarded as an unnecessary and incongruous appendage. So it's like the lute was the seed off of which all of the orchestra grew, and then when the lute was just not cool enough, they just got rid of it. Sad. The principal interest of the 17th century orchestral instruments, however, centers around bowed string groups, the viol and violin types, which together formed the first string orchestras, and before the end of the century had settled down into a group entirely of violin type. The four-part body of first violin, second violins, tenor violins, and basses, the orchestral string quartet employed by Scarlatti, Purcell, Bach, Handel, and all their successors. Viols, the dominating bowed string instruments of the 16th century, were in three main sizes: the treble or discant, the tenor or viola da braccio, arm viol, and the bass or viola da gamba, leg viol, roughly corresponding in size to the ordinary violin, tenor, or viola. Okay, wait, what? Are they saying the viola is the tenor violin? What? Oh, I gotta know now. Tenor violin. Oh. No, the tenor violin is its own thing. Tenor. Oh. What? Tenor violin or tenor viola is a medium-pitched bowed instrument with a range between those of the cello and the viola. An early development of the evolution of the violin family of instruments, the tuning is not standard in the modern symphony orchestra, probably because no one uses it anymore. Its tuning, especially Godet, an octave below the regular violin, places the range between the cello and the viola, and thus is sometimes confused with the modern baritone violin, which has the same tuning on the standard. What? You're not even. There's not even like a picture of it. Octave gauge. Performers on the baritone violin commonly use amplification to overcome the limited projection and sonority inherent with a lower range on a relatively small-bodied instruments. No kidding, that's why the viola exists. Daryl Anger. As a formal development, the 17th century tenor violin exists as an instrument with a body larger than a viola but with a short neck. The modern tenor violin next to a standard viola and violin. Okay. So, it's like just ever so slightly larger than a viola. 4 120-year-old tenor violins with a full-size standard violin, second from left. Okay. A man playing a tenor violin of the violin octet family in a sitting position. Okay. That's a tenor violin. Wait. Next to a standard viola. Wait, if it's the size of a... If the modern tenor violin is the size, or like about the size of the standard viola, like a little bit bigger, but not that much bigger, then why is it... That's not... Something is incorrect between these two photos, I think. What? Oh, are there multiple versions of the tenor violin that are just bigger? So wait, is there a tenor violin that plays in the bass range? Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh. Treble, soprano, mezzo, alto, tenor, contrabass. What? Is that the contrabass violin? Not a contrabass? Is it what? Bass violin? This article is about the archaic string instruments. What? Are these not the same thing? What's the difference? What's the difference between the double bass and this? You're usually somewhat larger than the modern cello, but tuned to the same nominal pitches, or sometimes one step lower. Contemporaneous names for these instruments include basso de viola da braccio, basso da braccio, or the generic term violone, which simply meant large fiddle. Okay. What? Wow, awesome. I like how there's clearly a picture of it here of a bass violin. I guess it must be like one of these. But then of course I had to include like an old illustration of it instead of an actual picture. Thanks, Wikipedia. A treble violin, tuned an octave above the violin. Okay. Oh my gosh. So just in case you didn't think the violin was was high enough. There's a violin dedicated to even higher. What does that even sound like? Alto violin by Yo-Yo Ma to perform and record Bela Bartok's viola concerto. What? Okay. Anyway, that's not the point. A fourth variety of the 16-foot tone. The what? The double bass or contrabasso, at one time known in Italy as the violone, did not undergo complete metamorphosis from viol to violin, and retains to this day some of the principal characteristics of the viol type. Other varieties appeared from time to time, differing in size, tuning, number of strings, and shape, but have never joined the standard string orchestra as permanent members. Why? Hello. Amongst these are the violas, which, in addition to the strings played on by the bow, were provided with a set of metal strings passing under the bridge and the fingerboard close to the belly, tuned so as to vibrate in sympathy with the gut strungs above the fingerboard. The viola d'amore and viola bastarda were respectively tenor and bass instruments of this variety. Okay, not gonna talk about the viola bastarda. Which also figure under various names such as the baritone with a Y or viola di bordone. The lira grande and the lira doppia appear to have been many stringed varieties of the bass viol, which were required to join the lutes and keyboard instruments in the basso continuo of the earliest opera and oratorio. So basically, I guess what this guy is saying is that there used to be a lot of string instruments until we just kind of settle on a select few. But basically, anytime that anyone created, like, someone saw a violin and they're like, I could do that, and then they just made the general shape of a violin body and put strings on into it, and they're like, yep, it's a new instrument. And he's like, all those other instruments, they just kind of died away in favor of these standard instruments later on. But I imagine, like, before they actually standardized the orchestra, people just got their hands on whatever instruments they could and played them, so... The main and essential differences between viol and violin types are the flat back of the viols against the molded or rounded back of the violins, which rises towards the center line and sinks towards the edges where the back joins the ribs. The deeper ribs of the viol, its sloping quote-unquote shoulders, and less pronounced quote-unquote corners. Viols were strung with 5, 6, or more strings, tuned according to the lute system in fourths and thirds, but at the time when violins appeared on the scene to challenge their supremacy had settled down to a more or less standardized arrangement of 6 strings tuned in fourths, but with a third between the 2 middle strings. The sound holes of viols, infinite in variety but laterally of C shape, differ from the F holes of violins. I know that's like what they are, but I just have such a problem with the term F holes. And other differences include the internal strengthening and the non-essential frets on the fingerboard, which were common to lutes, guitars, and kindred instruments, and were frequent but not invariable in the viol family. These constructional differences result in a tone which on the viols is described as being veiled and nasal but penetrating, and on the violins is fuller, rounder, and brighter. Charles II, who are you, preferred a band of violins because they were quote-unquote or quote, more airy and brisk than viols, unquote. And Thomas Mace, an eminent English lute player writing in 1676, refers to quote-unquote scolding violins and recommends that when they are added to a concert of viols, a consort of viols, a pair of theorbos should be provided as well so that the violins may not outcry the rest of the music. With a K. Well, it will probably never be determined when and by whom the first violin was made, and though the word violin, as distinguished from viol, occurs before the middle of the 16th century, the second half of that century marks the advent of the period during which violins gradually supplanted viols in the orchestra, a process lasting altogether well over a century. Okay. How informative that was. So what did we learn here? Violins are cool. Apparently controversial in their day because some people are like, wow, I love how it projects over the whole orchestra, and other people are like, man, I hate how it projects over the whole orchestra. And all those guys that played the lutes, they all lost their jobs because I guess Beethoven didn't write this for them, so they didn't care. The orchestra got bigger and bigger, and I guess it just got harder and harder to hear the lutes, so instead of advancing lute technology, they just abandoned the instrument altogether in the orchestra. How nice of them. Anyway, what a trip. It's time for actually writing music. Now, if I could remember which project it was, which I can't clearly because I'm looking through all these and I'm like, what? What is what do these mean? uh, uh, which one is it? This one? Yeah, this one. Okay. This is a melody that I quite like, but I have some ideas on how to make it better. So I'm going to open a new project file. I forgot I got rid of the keybind for Control N. I was pressing it, but nothing was happening. I got rid of the keybind for Control N because too often I would use Control plus scroll to zoom in and out, and then go to my keyboard and press the letter N, which is the keybind for adding new notes. But then it would just accidentally boot up a new musical file, which is not what I wanted. Actually, what I want to do, I have a template project here, which is called demo. This project's going to be called Grapes. That's the name. Okay. Here's my standard orchestra with all my sounds and also my preferences, so I turned off the reverb on most of them and added this master track. So perfect. This melody here I quite like. I just don't think it should start right here. And should start it instead like over here. And also this is the wrong key signature. And also the rhyme time signature. This is the rhyme time signature. Where's key signature? There you are. I'm also going to take these chords and put them somewhere. I don't know where. Probably down here. I'm going to add some measures before. More measures. And get to writing. So I have an idea. I've been like thinking about this like in my spare time really about how this would sound. Let's mark here you are to be 1. And maybe I should have my composition thing put up. Let's take a look-see here. These chords don't really belong to a mode, at least over here. What would the sharp 3 and the... yeah, it's not here, and the augmented 3rd, but that doesn't exist anywhere. These chords don't really belong to a mode, but I do see this Lydian chord here, and this guy here, which I usually think of as a Dorian chord. Dorian, none of you do. Mixolydian has the minor 5 and the major 1, so I guess you could say that this is a Mixolydian progression. So maybe I'll steal the, no, because it's like a minor 1. Maybe like major 3 would sound nice here. Let me try. Any music theory, but if a song is in minor key, is the 1 chord a minor still? Depends on what you mean. Notation-wise, if a chord, like if we're in A minor here, I know I'm using tuba to play chords, shut up. Like I still think of this as the 1 chord, but if you capitalize it, like by convention, even if it's A minor, like A is really just like the key center, and instead, if you were to write this, then I would think that you mean A major in the key of A minor. Or sometimes, like, I think there's a notation that uses this as minor, so this would mean A minor instead of the lowercase Roman numerals. They just have like this minus sign. I wasn't taught that system, so I just use this one. Okay, so I'm gonna steal some ideas from Debussy because he's dead and he can't say anything about it. And I want here C. Let's do. Here, this will make it easier for me to read. I'm gonna put U in bass clef. Make you guys nice and quiet. Boink. I realized that horns probably can't play triple piano without being muted. But I don't want the sound of muted horns. What tempo was the original at? 79, that's like Andante, right? Andante. But like a slower Andante. Do Patreon instead. Okay. A less close harmony. It needs to be more sparse. Try here. Maybe like nice and high, like this. Maybe just higher in register. No, I don't like that. I want it to be sparse. So probably this was our best. Good, I like that sound. And I want... Can you be... I did kind of want this nice 3 here. But... I need to be more... 3, C, try F, B, and G. No. I think a normal 7 chord will suffice here. Try this. No, oh, sorry. You guys are not loud enough. Can you be... I don't like how major that is. C... Try E flat here, I guess. That's not minor at all. I mean, supposedly it's a minor chord, what with the C, E flat, and G, but all of these guys are playing an E flat major chord, so it just sounds like that. That's stupid. That's stupid. Just C major sounds a bit too nice though. I don't really like the sound of that. That's closer to the sound I want. Can the violas also help out here because I can't hear anything that the cellos are doing? I don't like how high that is. Both of you play nice and low. Here, you be a bit louder, my friend. And I would like you to repeat, maybe with some slight variation in the second part here to make it a bit more satisfying. Because I'm liking these chords a little bit. And I want you to be a bit more... I want you to move a little more than that. So, a similar chord, 3, 5. Let's try just 5. 5 here should be what? E minor? Yeah, so... I mean, E minor we're playing here, but with the C in the bass, it'll sound more like a C major 7 chord. I'm okay with that. I think that's kind of cool. I want you here to play some wonderful pizzicato. Nice pitsies. No need for that. No, keep it nice and high. I want the melody to go like that for a little bit. I'm not sure if clarinet is exactly the instrument that I want here. What are you? 1, try here, 1 beautiful A minor chord. The violins probably must emphasize the note that I want to hear most in the chord. So how about, oh, whoopsies. How about both of y'all play C? You guys are just too loud. I don't know. Maybe you guys need to be in a different instrument. Can you do flutes and clarinets, please? Pretty please. Try this. Maybe you guys will be a bit nicer and... something about that just feels so... bad. Can you do... bassoon and flutes? It just has no body. That's kind of why I like the horns. Can you be even slower? This feels a bit too fast. Because I think it's because the cello has so much body, and then the bassoon and the flute by comparison just don't have anything. So try here, 2 horns, 2 trombones. I like that a bit more, which would just make this a... Actually, wait. First of all, you would be minor, and you would be major. Flat 3. Okay. There you go. I know you're a 40-year-old man, don't lie. Wow, you got me. Okay, so the note after this is, what did I notate here? 3, augmented 3 over the third. That means C augmented over E. So you're E. And E, no, C augmented, that's right. So you ought to be, let's keep the C here. And I realize none of you are playing the third. I guess the third's being played in the bass already. Okay. Then we need just, what, G sharp? Okay, Viola's, are you even there? I cannot hear you. You're already being played by the violins, so I'll get rid of you. That doesn't sound nearly as full as I would like it. Try just 2 violins here. Okay, where is this pizzicato? I can't. I hear it. And also, where are the second violins? Look how loud the first violins are in comparison to the second. Bro, where are you? Come on. Or maybe the first violins are just too loud. Can you guys both? Can you go up maybe? I'm not really liking this movement in the bass. Here, get rid of this. And instead I want you to move to... yeah, since the bass moves up, you guys can move down. I'm okay with that, but I also need someone here playing E. So you're playing, what, A minor... you play E. You also play E. And just hear what this sounds like. Okay. Can you move up an inversion? I also am a little wary of this violin going so low, because I don't know if it can go much lower. So you, my friend here, you move to G sharp, and you, whoopsies, you move to A. There you go. Okay, that feels a little bit better in my mind. So you here move to C sharp. Very fun. C sharp, but not diminished, just minor. So what would the G sharp appears again? C sharp this time, and then still E natural, I believe. That's still C sharp. Beautiful. And try again. That doesn't quite have the fullness that I want. Maybe I need to put it on an inversion. Maybe try G sharp here. No, I don't like that very much. I think it does need to be this wonderful C sharp here, but maybe like this. Although I'm a little wary of this jump here. No, it just sounds awful. Maybe, try again. Let me hear this together. Yeah, there's like a parallel octave here that I don't like. I'm gonna move you down to E. Keep you nice down here at C sharp. Move you back down to E. I don't think I like that low C as much as I thought I would. Okay, I'm gonna keep this like chromatic movement here. And maybe I'll just move you somewhere else. You can be G sharp. And you can be what? Well, but no, you should like be what's that? Pizza. You're so right. It stands for pizza. And it stands for pizzicato, which means you pluck the strings of your instruments. Very fancy word for something so simple, don't you think? C sharp. See, I'm having a problem figuring this out. Because I don't like this. I have a problem with that. Can you move to, what is this? C sharp, E, G sharp. C sharp, E, G sharp. What note would work here? F sharp? I guess it's okay. You ought to move here to E and you ought to move to F sharp though instead of whatever I was doing before. And you move to, what is this? 6 and A, that's F sharp. No, yes. F sharp on the F sharp major on the C sharp. Is it seriously still the same bass note? I guess, well, that's what I wrote. I can change it, I guess, if I don't like it. So, you are F sharp major. Major, right? So, that's not correct. Did I mean F major and not F sharp major? And I just notated it poorly? I guess I did. You should be flat 6. Okay. Let me just naturalize these guys here. Oh, oopsies. Natural. Okay, I'm gonna call that okay. I also want some movement here. Maybe lower. No, I don't like that. So you being sharp diminished 4, that should be what in the key of A, D sharp diminished over Man, I am struggling here. D sharp diminished over A natural. So you do this, and you do D sharp diminished has, wait, no, that's wrong. It should be, well, no, yeah, that's right. D sharp, F sharp, and A. So you move to F sharp, you move to D sharp, and you stay here at A. And then you move to E minor over G. Okay, I have some ideas about how to rearrange the orchestra a little bit, but I want to have at least the chords down so I know where I'm going. Okay, I'll try a little bit of this with C natural. Maybe. I want this chord to be a little bit more ambiguous. Okay, I like that. I also do compositions, but I'm basically self-taught. How do you make melodies and also the chords plus chord changes? I'm also self-taught in this, but I have some ideas. It's difficult to say because, of course, I would say you must evaluate this kind of thing on a case-by-case basis, but generally when I'm writing chords, I keep in mind, because I write using functional harmony, I keep in mind the purpose of each chord, what it does, and how it works together in the chord progression to achieve what I want, namely a satisfying-ish pattern. So chord changes, the shortest version ever is, I would say, read some books on, I don't really have one that comes to mind because I've read kind of pamphlets, but I can't remember the names of all of them right now. Try to remember which chords have which functions, the tonic, subdominant, and dominant chords, and their associated chords. And then you can just kind of string together those chords in a certain pattern to kind of achieve different chord progression. Man, I'm trying to generalize this so much that it's just becoming unhelpful. Dang it. Basically, there are 3 types of chords, and stringing them together in a certain way creates a tension and release pattern. And once you have a basic chord progression down, you can kind of just evolve it by changing the notes of some of those chords and making them sound slightly different while still keeping that same kind of vibe. Again, that's the extremely short version, without this becoming a lecture. So I would say look into chords and their functions. I'm allergic to theory. Okay. So let's here. Right now I just have these chords happily plucking along. I'd also like that contrabass to be a little louder, please. That's not a contrabass, there you go. Let's start here from the oboe solo. And I want, at least starting maybe from here, I want you guys to kind of start on the downbeat instead of starting on the second beat. So I'm just gonna kind of move you guys. And I want here the horns to punctuate the second beat instead. So remember how I had these guys here, which I realize now that you could just do this and make things simpler in myself. And these are probably suited to first and third horns though, because they're higher up. I want you guys to do a nice crescendo. What in tarnation's going on there? No. You guys do a little crescendo over here to piano, and as do you guys. You move to piano, you graduate to mezzo piano. And I want here maybe bassoons. No, well, the melody is already. Oh my gosh, you guys hearing that? These melodies being accentuated, or not accentuated, the melody is already being played by a woodwind. Like the fundamental, like the base of the chords and the violins. And then I want something to help here in the what do you call the brass? So, although the fullness of the chord is already being said by the violins, so maybe I take this harmony of the U. And let's take these higher notes, put them here. Take these lower notes, put them here. And why are you different note values? Thank you. Put you implode here. And this extra F sharp. Oh wait, I just realized that you guys are way far apart from each other. Oh, because you're playing the bass notes, that's right. Here, just get rid of this low horn. And I guess that F sharp can go. But I do like the F sharp. Maybe, or maybe a pure A chord is okay. And okay, so here's my idea. I want to transfer the harmony over from the violins and the violas to, let me do this again just so it's a bit nicer to look at. Let's do trumpets. And we'll have this viola part be played by a trombone, which is not just a big trumpet, but you can think of it as just a big trumpet. Now, just a general like principle of orchestration, then I'll tell you that of course doesn't have to be followed to a T, but I will tell you anyway as if you should. But just keep that in mind, that generally if you're writing for a full orchestra, you want to be able to hear the timbres of the instruments separately while still retaining the nice big sound of the orchestra. So I will say that don't write too many chords close to each other in too many groups of instruments. So right now I have some close chords here in on the brass and some close chords happening here in the strings. And also I didn't like the sound of those trumpets, so I shall put you somewhere else. Let me put you in the horns and you in the trombones. There you go. There you go. Okay, what does this sound like? Is that a bit too bright? Okay, well anyway, it's better practice, because if you write close harmony here in the violin, close harmony just means that they're close together. Those notes are relatively close together. Writing close harmony in one group of instruments makes it so that it's more difficult to hear close harmony in another group of instruments. And if there's close harmony playing in two whole groups of instruments, then the instruments will just kind of compete with each other for dominance instead of working together to create a bigger sound. The sound will come off as a bit too thick and it's not very clear what it's supposed to sound like. you might think maybe it comes off like as a grand sound, but in my opinion, it just comes off a bit too dense. So instead, generally what I like to do is have the brass be the ones play the close harmony, and then have the strings here be the ones to play the more separate and sparse harmony. That way the strings create like the foundational bed for the brass to build upon, because I think the brass are just a bit better at accentuating the fullness of a chord, and then the violins and the strings are much better at creating the foundation of a chord. Of course you could do it the other way around, but I just prefer to do this way. So I could be lazy, and I am pretty lazy, and just have you guys play the fundamental notes of the chord, namely the bass notes. I could also let's see. I'm okay with the cellos and violas copying each other, but I would also like here for something a bit more creative. Let's see. Flat 6 here, your F major, I remember. So let's have you guys just play the same thing here. F natural, and like that. This sharp chord here is a D sharp diminished chord, which means you're playing A. I could have you play D sharp. I could also have you play F sharp. Let's have you play F sharp. So you notice here the chord doesn't feel as full as it did before. And instead, you guys are the ones playing the full chords, which by the way, I would prefer you to have the like that kind of pattern that we had before, where you started on the second beat. Okay. Let's continue this pattern over here where I have, what are you? Diminished, no, not diminished, sorry. I saw that 6 and I thought diminished, but it's just figured bass. You are E minor, so G. G is already being played here. Actually I could move you down to E, which would make you a nice 6th. I'm okay with that. I mean, we'll just hear how it sounds in a moment and I'll judge whether I like that or not. And then this E can stay with this beautiful A minor chord that happens after. Okay. Now let's hear you together, starting with the oboe solo. Slower movement here, more waltz-like. Let's have here, you play on this one for a sec so I can play a little bit more with the harmony. Up here with you. Make sure you're playing nice and quiet. Nice, okay. I think it needs to feel a little bit more dramatic here. Maybe a bit more bass, but I'm not quite sure. Let's try it again. And I'm feeling, you know, maybe it's just because it's nighttime, but I want this to be a bit slower. You do. And try here. I would like here, instead of horns and trombones, I would probably like bassoon and trombone a little bit here. I want to try that. So which one of you guys are playing the low notes? Bassoon should play the lower notes because it's better at that than a trombone. Or it's not better than that, but Trumpet has an easier time playing these high notes than a bassoon does, so a bassoon should play these lower notes. So you can play this. The bassoon has a similar-ish, and I do mean ish, tone quality to the horns and the trombones when they're so quiet and so reserved like this. You move to F sharp so I can get rid of this horn here, and I guess you can just go back here for consistency. Hold this note a little longer, pretty please. But also do a nice decrescendo. Whoopsies. Maybe he'll just hold on to this A for a little bit longer, like this. And you move back here to E. No, I don't like it. I don't like that there. Okay, I like that a bit more. You know, just for fun, I'm gonna put you in a different instrument just to hear what it sounds like. Try clarinets. You guys should move back down to pianissimo, I feel like. I think you're getting a bit too dramatic here. You move back to piano, you move back to pianissimo, and you guys can stay the same volume, that's fine. I also don't like the clarinet playing out very much. Maybe lower I would like. No, this is more... It sounds more like a flute to me in this range. Although this... I don't think that B is exactly playable on a normal C flute without an extension. Anyway, I just want to hear what it sounds like before I make any weird alterations. I think I like oboe the best. Nice and low here. Feels a bit mysterious. Don't tie that. You can tie it in subsequent bars though. Play a little bit longer, will you? And repeat this kind of progression we had here. I know I had these guys planned, but I'm going to move you aside for a sec. Put you like here. And then just, I guess, repeat this because I'm a very good composer and not lazy. And put you right here. And I'm a flute player with the B extension. Wow. I don't even know what a B extension looks like. I just know that flutes can have that extension because I read it in a book, but I've never actually used or seen it be used. Or at least I didn't recognize it. I've probably definitely seen it be used, but I haven't recognized it. You know what? Well, now is never not the time like the not present to know what a flute B extension is. Well, that's just the B natural. Imagine the foot joint but with a third hole past the C sharp and C. It's actually really common. Well, unfortunately, it's not telling me. What? Okay, so some cardboard. What? No. It's just an extra key for the pinky. Okay. Oh, that's goody to know. Okay. I'm kind of liking that. I want to try and perfect it a little bit more though. I'm trying to think of what I can improve though. Okay, let me start from the beginning. Try this, please. Try bassoon and clarinet. Or I forgot to add dynamics. You know, that'd do it. No, I like the sound of the trombone better here. Can you have a nice, very quiet, but still present timpani part here? I also would like, let me specify here, a nice big bass drum. And I would like a bass drum and cymbal hit here. I'm just curious what that sounds like. Also quiet, Oh, the piatti, I'm not sure if they can play this very nicely, pianissimo, so I shall put you in the suspended symbol again. Why are you separate from the rest of the... What happened to you? Did you get cast out for being Italian? Get back in the score. Why are you so far away from your peers? Okay, well, it'd be very helpful if I could hear them. Why are you so loud? Shut up. I can't really hear these guys. Probably on account of the very loud oboe. Decrescendo a bit sooner, please. Let's add here. First of all, I don't think I'm going to use that harp. Let's add back a triangle, which I don't know why I don't automatically have a triangle in every single piece I write. Also, why is the Bro, you're not a woodwind. Okay. Let me fix that. I include the triangle in just about every thing that I write because I like it very much and it has a wonderful sound. So I shall have a triangle here as well. I hard mallet. Soft mallet. I like that a bit. Okay. Can you actually use the vibroslap instead? Okay, why does that one sound particularly like a frog? I guess that's not exactly too far off from its intended purpose. I'd like a very quiet vibroslap here, but I just want one. That's actually so perfect. That's the sound, that's precisely the sound that I want. It's a bass drum. Bro, I can't hear you. I'm gonna try a different bass drum sound. Okay, that's even less easy to hear. Try this one. I can hear a little better. Try this pattern. Is this suspended symbol do I want, or is it really the tam-tam that I want here? And make that tab that appears every time I edit a percussion disappear. Oh, this one? I think there's an option for it, isn't there? It might be hidden here in preferences. Note input. Or percussion, yeah. Open the panel automatically. Never. I got annoyed by that, so I got out of it. Unless you're writing like the generic percussion track, like this one, mixed percussion. I really feel like I should do that, but I do it like this instead, where every single instrument is spread out like this. This is probably not the greatest, but it's the way that I have it. Let's use, is it tam hyphen tam? It sure is. Okay, tam hyphen tam it is. Hi tam hyphen tam. I would quite like to use the tam tam here. This small tam tam is fine. Do it here where this symbol is and hear what that sounds like. Oh my gosh. Shut up. Okay, beautiful. I'm probably used to composing. This is MuseScore 4. M-U-S-E, S-E-O-R-E. It's an okay program. I say with a big heavy sigh. I think I'm disliking how thick the sound is. Can you be played in 2 bassoons and 2 horns? I know that's not possible, but just bear with me for a sec. Try here, 2 trombones, 2 bassoons. I like that sound a lot more, so let's stick with that. What do you sound like an octave lower? I'm curious. Okay, terrible, as I thought. Maybe on an inversion you'd sound a bit nicer though. Right now you sound a bit terse. I think it's because the harmony here, like this trombone is so high up in this G and then it like suddenly moves down to E. It really feels like the harmony ought to be in the low end and then the oboe comes in the higher parts. So maybe you can move down an octave, but let's do the old switcheroo here. Let's see what that sounds like or hear it. Oh my gosh. Shut up. Thank you. What do you sound like if I carry you on to the note afterwards, like this? I kind of like that. I don't like it carrying on here though, but I'm kind of fond of it over here in this part. Or one of the notes here is wrong. Which note is wrong? What did I do? Ah, you. C sharp. I kind of want more pizzicato stuff happening here. I'm already kind of occupying these guys with... You here are playing what? Play a nice big chord here and pizzicato. If I can put here pits. You guys just play the same thing. Okay, well I can't hear it, so be louder, be prouder. And then the same thing happening over here with y'all. Okay. This is getting closer to what I want. I really like that high end though in the trombone. It just really completed that sound, and I would like to keep it there. Maybe put you on one horn. Two horns, two bassoons. I want you to be a different note. Can you play G instead? Like this? Like, that just has to happen. Okay. I'm liking this so far. And I like it so much that I'm gonna change it. Put you in the flute. Try this. No, that sounds a bit too ghostly. Thinking of other instruments that this might sound nice on. No, I can only think of oboe. Okay, on oboe you go. Why is horn and bass clef? For me, I understand that hornists might prefer to read the treble clef. If I turn off concert pitch here, then it'll be in the treble clef because that's what hornists like to be. In fact, more accurately, you guys should be like this. I think some hornists can read the bass clef as far as I know, but me personally, I like to have this grand staff of horns, if you will. But of course, hornists will probably be reading something more like this. Alto flute, maybe. I do want a clarinet after this, I think. And I only think. Can you, like, do something like this? Low horn is usually bass, I'm pretty sure, like horn 4 sometimes. Yeah, that is also true. Because horns 1 and 3 are like the treble guys, and then the horns 2 and 4 are like the bass guys. I don't know, it just depends on the kind of music you're writing. Like these notes here. Very awesome horn sounds. Bass clef, I mean, even if you wrote them in the treble clef, and like you wrote them in transposed pitch, like, well, here's the thing, right? Like, I'm pretty sure, like, actual hornists might prefer to read this over something like this in the bass clef, even if this transpose wasn't the bass clef. I think hornists might just prefer to read, or at least not like I think professional hornists, like, they can read different clefs easily, but like, you know, people that aren't in symphony orchestras probably might struggle a little bit more to read different clefs that aren't the clef that they're used to, the treble clef for horns. Same with like the bassoon playing tenor or even treble clef I've seen. Like they're, at least this is mostly like anecdotal from people telling me, but they would rather read ledger lines than an entirely different clef. So for me, I just write in the bass clef because it's what I understand, but I understand that hornists might not. So in an actual score, they would read like this. I'm not actually writing for a real orchestra to play this because I don't have those kinds of connections, but either way, it's something to keep in mind. So it's something I will be keeping in mind. You're so loud. Be quiet. Okay, and figure back here to the original, which sounds terrible and you should not listen to because it's awful. I will steal this wonderful melody here and put it in my clarinet front. Listen to that nice transition there. 6. So you should be, what, F sharp? Is it F? Did I write F sharp? Probably not. No, it's got to be F major. Man, I am not good at notating these chords. You should be flat major 6 and flat major 7, which would put you squarely in Aeolian, I think. Yeah, look at those wonderful chords together. So, oh man. Do I want low F here? I think low F might be a bit difficult to hear, so I'm gonna put you in high F. Like, as nice as these notes sound, I think lower it like doesn't sound as nice unless it has some backbone, like if it's punctuated by lots and lots of instruments, or if I just have them play louder, but I don't really want that. And so Um... You guys both can go back to playing Arco and go back to playing Pianissimo. Okay. What kind of other creatures do I want helping me out here? Do horn again. Let's do horn again. That's not horn. That just sounds sad. I don't want that. But then you have the C, C, and the D, D. That sounds a bit nicer to me. And you just move down here to B. Hold on, thinking about this. Try this. I would like you to play the close harmonies this time, in which you already are. So, I should relegate you horns to playing the fundamentals. Maybe like this, nice and big chord. Yeah, like that. No, that sounds a bit too dense. Maybe like this. Yeah, it's better. C or G, G, B. Ideally, instead, I just have another voice enter here. Like this. Yeah, like that. Or, actually, maybe. You. Try something like this. do this. I want to hear you play some melody. Okay, not so loud right off the bat. That sounds a bit nicer. I guess having multiple... No. Multiple violins. Instead of you guys playing necessarily in octaves, maybe one of you should be a bit more counter melody-like. I don't know if this will sound any good. Let's give it a try. And whatchamacallit here, A minor. This 2 is what, G diminished. Oh, that's not very G of you. What are you? Over E minor. No, A minor over E. That's what I meant to say. Maybe you should move up to C. What are you? Did I write that chord correctly? It is G diminished, correct? Did I change keys somewhere? We're here to A. No. What am I thinking? No, you're not G. You're B. That's not how notes work. B. B. B diminished. Over F natural. Man, I'm so smart. Okay. And then you move to, what's that? C major over G. Awesome. And then let's just write in some simple horn parts here for simplicity. I don't like that close harmony. Okay. Why is there a bunch of rests here? Why are there a bunch of rests here? Okay. It feels like we're missing something. I'm not hearing you very much. Maybe you should be in clarinet instead. Nice and loud. Maybe you just need some encouragement. Like this. Nice. Maybe guys, so you're overlapping each other a bit. And then you move to, what's it? This. Nope, nope, as you were, like this. And then to C major. So G, I guess, would work here. This, you, nope, wrong P. Wrong piano, that piano. No, you gotta be a bit more dramatic. This is A minor. Yeah, like up there. No, no, no. Put the dynamics down. There you go. Just like that. You, you need to be a bit quieter. The counter melody. A bit louder. Maybe you need to be punctuated by like a flute or something. More crescendo, please, pretty please. Both of you. Okay. Okay, I do have these rests here because it was originally written for like a flute, but I'm wondering if it'll, I mean, rests are nice, maybe it still sounds nice with them. Rests are good. I am thinking that I need to have more rests here in the counter melody then. These slurs are also just not it. These slurs are different per instrument. So here. No, 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 no. All wrong, all wrong. There you go. And then you move to E minor, E. What's this? You also move to E. You move to O4. That should be what? D minor over A. So you move to A. Do I want low A or high A? Let's do high. And then you move to a wonderful 7 here, which is G. Because I think you do, in my old version here, a modulation. Yeah, well, kind of. It's A minor to C major, which is so creative, and no genius has ever matched mine in terms of modulation. A minor to C major. It was crazy. Anyway, what's right here? Okay, so you guys do this. I need you guys to be nice and loud. 'cause you're the harmony playing against these loud strings. And I'm gonna reduce that volume a tiny bit. See how the harmony's just gone. Back to C here. I'm actually not very proud of this writing here, but that's fine. I'll survive. Rewind, I won't survive, that sounds terrible. Did you write secondary chords? Or like with the slashes? Implicitly, yeah. Do I notate them? No. Okay, what was I doing here? Right, F major. Let's make you guys a little bit nicer to look at, so. G. Something here needs a little bit more bites. Let's try here. You guys play this A minor part. And you trombones play some nice low ends, and I'm curious what that might sound like. Terrible. Don't have that. I don't like the sound of the horns here. The horns are they're just too nice sounding. Not cool enough. I need the trombones just add that little bit of bites. Like the horns sound fine down here, because of course they do. But for these parts, I'm not so sure. It does sound a little empty, but I'll live this time. This time I will. Don't play the whole time so you can take a breath. I guess I didn't really account for that here. Yeah, whatever. Back to B minor, or B diminished, sorry, different. Maybe here, just have some slurs, because they'll look and sound nice. There you go. Any need for those here? I don't think so. Yeah, we're good. Maybe here, actually. Like this. Nah, it's gotta start on E. Can the dynamics here be a bit more dramatic, pretty please? Nice and loud here on the strings. Similarly here on the horns, although you should die off to a nice no, what the heck, no, what the heck, go to pianissimo here. Something here has gotta like, it gotta click, you know, like something here's gotta really change at this harmonic change from E to F. But like that chromatic movement, it's like a very soft modulation, and I feel like I gotta feel that a little more. I don't know how I'm gonna achieve that, but maybe octaves pizzicato is the way. Okay, that's maybe not. You guys an octave lower? Or maybe cello in octaves would be cool. No, that actually feels weaker somehow. Okay. I don't know if a pianissimo tuba exists, but let's give it a try. Just to kind of help improve the bass, maybe? I think a contrabassoon would sound better. Contrabassoon. And of course, I'll take any excuse to put a contrabassoon in the orchestra because, well, the contrabassoon is just awesome. It's also very goofy looking and sounding, which is why it's so awesome, of course. Let's put that wonderful contrabassoon in. That's actually a bit too low, but I do like that. What's that? B or F? Tuba and contrabassoon here on this A minor drop. No, that actually sounds terrible. Here, just have both of you guys play like this. And timpani hit here maybe on this E. I want a flute here. Whatever you're playing here in the, what are you called, violins, have you also in the flute. Never mind, don't have it in the flutes. Okay, it's kind of bothering me that you're not connected to this. Please, pretty please, do some of this. Good. More violas. That's my solution. Or more cellos, I guess. What are you? What are you called? B diminished? That's what that's called. I forgot though. Let's C major here. Have you played these parallel fourths because I am above the law. But also you guys have to do some crescendo. Otherwise I ain't gonna hear none of it. You can also go to mezzo piano like you was doing before. Where are you? E minor. E, B, E, B. There you go. Or maybe G. No, that's fine. And I guess you guys here ought to also increase in dynamic. P. P is for pole. There you go. Why is there a pianissimo rest? Nice. I think, yeah, the swell here should die down a little bit till it moves to the next part, which will be a bit more dramatic. Or you can just have a repeat of the melody or something, which I might do. It would be a bit nicer, I think. And pianissimo here. Oh, I said pianissimo. Move to E, actually. Move to not octaves like this. Oh yeah, wait, hold on, where's the... Where's you? cannot hear you guys. You guys just have to be one constant volume, I think. And not like Archimedes' principle, more like dynamics. Like, I just can't hear that. But I'd rather the melody be louder than you anyway, so I'll sacrifice your clarity for the melody. I want some movement here and some chords. I think that'll sound nice with the oboes and the flutes together. So I want to hear C to E minor somehow. Oh my gosh, I'm allergic to bad harmony. Okay. Maybe a bit lower. No, nice and loud. I was playing and you sneezed. Yeah, sorry for ruining the illusion for you. What? Is my sneeze really any louder than the orchestra though? Be a bit quieter. Go back to mezzo piano and piano. What chord are you moving to? D minor. What is this? Down to G major. Okay, and then I think back here to the harmony that we had going here before we started on the second beat would be nice, as it's slowing down a tiny bit. And so once again, y'all in the lower end, you in the higher end. Okay. I'm not sure how I'm gonna move after this. Okay. Maybe some percussion would help. I think the pause here is okay. I want this to hold. Okay. That makes me feel a little bit better. I don't like how loud these guys are though. You guys can be just a teensy weensy bit quieter. Yoink. Okay. Start here from the beginning of this part. I realize now that you guys should also be quiet. Shush. Shush, shush, shush. All of you, shush. Shush, sheesh. Silence, fool. No, 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 not like that. Like this. You like this. And you like this. Now it's much better. What do I want now? You also ought to move up C daisies. Yes, yes, yes. And you also move down C daisies back to pianissimo. Keep that contrabassoon rolling. Okay. I think, I mean, it could use some work, but I'll move on to the next part, which is this part here. It becomes very loud. And I think it was in the trumpet. Let's give it a shot here, and I'm not sure what I'm gonna think of it now, but Maybe... try, instead of trumpet actually, that might be a bit too loud right off the bat. Do a horn and an oboe. Wow. A horn and oboe. And quieter horn. A louder oboe. Maybe... let me nick the chords from over here as well. I think that's how it goes. So here it used to be in C major, or no, it used to be in A minor, and then it moves to C major. Man, I really want a bagel right now. Maybe a donut. I'm not quite sure what the accompaniment is gonna sound like here. Let me listen to the melody first and imagine. Okay. I think tremolo. Where are you, tremolo? You're not tremolo. You gotta be arco. Arco. Ordinary. No, arco. All you guys start like this, I guess. And then nice big crescendo to 5G. And then what's this? 4 minor 4. That's F minor. That's not correct. Are you even playing the right note? No. That's not correct. You're not bass clef. Maybe all octaves here play this. Violins don't go too high though. Just okay, that'll do, I guess. I also kind of want to hear some nice timpani action. No, wrong piano. That kind of piano. Thank you. Beautiful. With the bass drum. Actually, I think the bass drum is a bit superfluous. Get out of here. I changed my mind immediately. I think woodwind harmony is going to be what I want here. So let me write here some woody wind harmonies. Very sophisticated. And then back down to the F minor. I don't think that part's gonna last too long because I want it to move to a wonderful horn melody, or not melody, horn accompaniment or something along those lines. Okay, strings are too loud. Shut up. Try this. Okay, the oboes are not exciting enough. I need trumpets. Big and exciting. Then die down back here. What are you? D minor, so wow. Okay, try this. Now I have horns and tubas. That's not correct. You're supposed to be B flats. And also, I think you're way too low, my tuba friend. You need to be a bit higher. Okay. Something about this also feels not so nice. It feels like here there needs to be some more harmony. F minor. Here, you guys in the stringies. You do harmony. It's almost like that's your job. And then here we'll have some wonderful, maybe clarinet and oboe parts. Let's give it a try. Oh, you need to be a bit louder than that. Nice crescendo up here. And then maybe the basses. Nice. And then you here in the woodwinds, be a bit louder. And then back to C major. That's not, no, 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 you moron. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I like that nice jump, right? Have that crescendo, not crescendo, that tremolo last longer. You need to die down. You need to die. Also, I think the tempo here is a bit too, it's a bit too slow. You're already an andante, so move to andantino. Maybe at like, I don't know, 75. You used to be at, what, 69 BPM. Now you're at 75. It's not quite dramatic enough. Maybe the timpani needs to be a bit louder. And what's this? No, what was that sound? No. Tremolo. Can I have a nice thundering bass drum here? And maybe a beautiful cymbal here. Okay, maybe not. Okay, I'm not really feeling that thunder. It needs to be a bit louder, maybe. I mean, I do have this entire horn track, which I'm not using, which I should probably get to using. Let me just make it clear. A2 here. Okay, that's kind of blending with the bassoon part, but it's probably fine. What is G major? I am forgetting. Sure. F minor. Which one's F minor? And then back to U, which is... keep that F. Or maybe... I want D here. Yeah, that helps a bit. You do need to shush a bit though here, but I do want you to increase some volume. Like this. Like this. Down to, what is this, C major? Beautiful. And then C. I just want to hear this. Maybe not forte. No, it just doesn't sound nice though. Better. But I'm not really sure about that either. Maybe I just think this horn part is just too loud, so I'm gonna turn down these horns a bit. Faster. I got a bit more tempo. I got rhythm. Contra bassoon. Nice and loud. Same with tuba. Man, that contra bassoon sure knows how to make herself known. What a noise. And you know what? All bassoons, I want you to follow suit with your contra bassoon cousin. Beautiful. I could make use of the contrabassoon's lowest note here, which is a B flat 0. What a wonderful note. And I think we need something similar here. Because there's not enough. Well. Try again. Something feels like it's missing here. Like, I don't know. I don't like the sound of the brass here. I just don't. I think it sounds awful. It just sounds too nice. It doesn't sound like biting enough. I don't really know how I'll fix that though. Probably it's the horn's fault though. I ought to have them play a bit lower, I think. Or more harmonious. Because right now they're just playing something kind of lame. What are you, B flats? Maybe the... a bit more something happening here in the stringies. It makes me feel a little bit better, but not that much better. Well, I don't think I like that either. That's okay though. Up, not down. I think more percussion here could be nice. Uh, okay. I don't. I think this first part is very interesting. I think the second part becomes a bit too gaudy. Like it kind of ruins the vibe a bit too early. Like it's okay, but it needs to stay in this kind of mopey feeling for a little bit longer, I think, to really like sink in. Um, so, but that'll be something that happens next time. Next time on the Shirgi channel, where I rearrange everything again. Okay. Well, I'll see you guys later, and that's the end of the stream. Make sure to join the Discord server and subscribe and stuff. I'll see you later.